The world we live in today is shaped more by our minds than by our circumstances. Think about it. Two people can go through the same challenge, yet one walks away defeated and the other walks away stronger. What made the difference? It wasn't luck. It wasn't resources. It was mindset. Our thoughts are not just fleeting ideas. They are architects of our reality. When you believe you can grow, you open doors that once seemed locked. When you believe you're stuck, you build walls around yourself. The way you think sets the limits on what you can achieve. Change always begins inside. If we wait for the world to change, we will wait forever. But if we begin by shifting our perspective, opportunities appear that were invisible before. The moment you decide to see problems as lessons, failures as feedback, and challenges as opportunities, your life changes direction. It doesn't mean difficulties vanish. It means you start carrying them differently. Instead of saying, why me? You begin to ask, what can I learn? That one change in thinking transforms pressure into progress. Greatness has never been about avoiding struggle. It has always been about reshaping how we think in the middle of it. People who achieve extraordinary things are not different in talent. They are different in perspective. They train their minds to see possibilities where others see impossibilities. So if you want to change your life, start with the simplest but most powerful shift to change your thinking. Because when your thoughts align with growth, resilience, and purpose, life bends to match that vision. Fev keynotes of the speech, your mindset is the architect of your reality. Thoughts shape outcomes more than circumstances do. Change begins internally. Shifting perspective reveals opportunities that once seemed invisible. Reframing problems as lessons and failures as feedback turns obstacles into progress. Success is not about avoiding struggles, but transforming how you think within them. Aligning your thoughts with growth and resilience creates a life that reflects those values. Your mindset is the architect of your reality. Thoughts shape outcomes more than circumstances do. This idea may sound simple, but it is one of the most powerful truths about human potential. Every single day, our lives are directed not only by what happens to us, but by the lens through which we interpret those events. When something goes wrong, the natural response is often to blame the situation, the people involved, or even the world around us. Yet, if you study people who consistently rise above challenges, you'll notice that they don't necessarily have fewer problems. They simply interpret those problems differently. Their thoughts about the situation allow them to act with clarity instead of fear, with purpose instead of panic. Consider this: two students can take the same exam. Both study equally. Both face the same level of difficulty, yet one sees a poor grade as proof of failure while the other views it as a signal to study differently next time. The circumstances are identical, but the outcomes diverge because of mindset. This is the silent power of thought. It magnifies or diminishes every experience we go through. Your thinking becomes the filter through which life passes, deciding what sticks and what gets dismissed. This is not just psychology, it's practical life. Think of a person who loses their job. One person might think, I'm worthless, I'll never find another opportunity. And in that mindset, they stop applying, they stop learning, and eventually their belief becomes true. Another person might think, this is a chance to reinvent myself, to learn a new skill, to discover something I've always wanted to do. And that shift leads them to action, growth, and eventually success. Notice how in both cases, the external event is the same, but the internal dialogue creates a completely different future. When we say mindset is the architect of reality, it doesn't mean that thoughts alone magically change the world. Rather, thoughts direct the actions we take, and actions are what build our lives. If you constantly think you are incapable, you will not even attempt the things that could prove your capability. But if you think you have a chance, even a small one, you act differently, you take risks, you put yourself in places where opportunities can find you. This repeated action, fueled by thought, creates momentum that shapes results. Over time, your external life starts to reflect the architecture your inner thoughts have been quietly constructing. The human brain is designed to confirm what it believes. If you believe you are unlucky, your mind will focus on every small misfortune, ignoring moments of luck. If you believe you are capable, your mind will highlight every small success, giving you motivation to keep moving. This is why guarding your thoughts is crucial. They are not passive, they are active forces building the foundation of the life you live tomorrow. It's worth reflecting on how much of your current life is the result of past thinking. The job you are in, the relationships you maintain, the level of confidence you feel. It all carries the fingerprints of thoughts you chose to hold on to. At some point, you believed something about yourself and you acted accordingly. If you believed you were not good enough to lead, you might have stayed quiet when leadership opportunities arose. If you believed you could learn quickly, you might have taken on challenges that scared others away. Over time, these small thought-driven choices accumulate into the life you see today. The good news is that mindset is not fixed. It is flexible, trainable, and always under construction. You can choose to adjust the architecture at any point. If you want a bigger, stronger structure for your life, it begins with changing the blueprint, your thoughts. Instead of repeating to yourself that things are impossible, you can ask, what if they were possible? Instead of telling yourself you don't belong, you can remind yourself that every expert was once a beginner. These shifts may seem small, but like a blueprint, one small line can change the shape of an entire building. Imagine a world where every person understood this power. People would stop waiting for external circumstances to align perfectly before they felt capable of moving forward. They would realize that external change follows internal change, not the other way around. They would recognize that the life they want begins in the mind long before it shows up in reality. Ultimately, mindset is not just about positive thinking. It's about intentional thinking. It's about choosing to create a mental environment that supports growth rather than destruction. Every belief you reinforce is a brick in the house of your reality. If you choose beliefs of limitation, you will build walls that keep you trapped. If you choose beliefs of possibility, you will build doors and windows that let light in. Life is not designed by chance, it is designed by thought. And the design you choose determines the life you live. Change begins internally. Shifting perspective reveals opportunities that once seemed invisible. This principle is one of the most important realizations a person can make in their journey of growth. Many people believe that their circumstances must improve before they can feel fulfilled, but in reality, it is often the opposite. When you begin by altering the way you see the world, the very same environment that once felt limiting starts to look different. The same walls that felt like barriers begin to show cracks through which possibilities shine. The truth is that life does not always hand us perfect conditions. Some people grow up with fewer resources, fewer connections, or fewer opportunities than others. If external conditions alone determine success, then only the most privileged would ever achieve anything meaningful. But history proves otherwise. Over and over, we see examples of individuals who had little in their hands, but a great deal in their minds. Their ability to shift perspective allowed them to see possibilities where others only saw emptiness. That inner transformation, often invisible to others, is what led them to create lives of influence and meaning. Perspective works like a lens. If you wear glasses with scratched, darkened lenses, everything you see will look distorted, unclear, and unpleasant. But if you change the lens, the world itself has not changed. Your ability to see it clearly has. This is exactly what happens when you shift perspective. You begin to notice opportunities that were already present, but hidden beneath the fog of limiting beliefs or negative thinking. For instance, a difficult coworker might feel like nothing more than an obstacle until you shift perspective and realize they are actually teaching you patience, negotiation, or leadership. The coworker has not changed, but your perspective reveals the lesson that transforms the relationship. This internal shift also affects how we experience challenges. Most people see challenges as threats, and when viewed that way, fear takes over. But when you shift perspective, challenges become training grounds. Suddenly, the same situation that could have discouraged you becomes the very thing that strengthens you. A person who loses a business might feel crushed until they realize the failure taught them resilience, gave them new insights, and prepared them for a second attempt with sharper skills. The event itself has not changed, but the way it is interpreted opens doors to growth. Another powerful aspect of shifting perspective is the way it alters how we see limitations. Limitations often appear as stop signs, but to someone with the right perspective, they are invitations to innovate. Think of how many inventions and breakthroughs in history were born out of a lack of resources or a pressing need. People who refused to be defined by their limitations discovered solutions that not only changed their own lives, but also transformed society. This is the hidden power of internal change. It doesn't just affect the individual, it ripples outward and influences others. Even in daily life, small perspective shifts can lead to remarkable outcomes. For example, instead of dreading a long commute, someone might use that time to listen to educational podcasts, effectively turning wasted hours into personal growth. Instead of resenting criticism, someone might begin to view it as free feedback that accelerates their improvement. These are not changes in circumstance, but changes in the way the circumstance is seen. And each shift unlocks opportunities that would have remained invisible otherwise. It's also worth noting that shifting perspective requires intentional effort. Our minds are naturally drawn to comfort and familiarity, which means we tend to interpret situations the same way again and again. To truly change, you must challenge yourself to ask new questions. What else could this mean? What am I not seeing yet? What can I learn from this? These questions disrupt old patterns of thinking and create space for fresh insights. Over time, this becomes a habit, and your brain begins to naturally search for opportunity instead of limitation. When people say that change begins within, it is not just a motivational phrase. It is a description of how transformation really works. The external world may take time to adjust, but the internal world can shift instantly with a new perspective. And when it does, you start to take different actions. You see a chance to network instead of a room full of strangers. You see a challenge instead of a threat. You see growth instead of failure. Those actions then create results which reinforce the new perspective, building a cycle of progress. What once seemed invisible now becomes visible, not because the world suddenly changed, but because your eyes open to it. This is the hidden key that separates those who feel stuck from those who keep moving forward. The most successful people are not those who had the easiest path, but those who trained their minds to see what others missed. The moment you shift perspective, you change the way you think, the choices you make, and ultimately, the life you live. Reframing problems as lessons and failures as feedback turns obstacles into progress. This principle may sound simple, but it is one of the most transformative ways to approach life. Too often, people see problems as evidence that they are unlucky, incapable, or destined to struggle. They see failure as a permanent mark of defeat rather than a temporary step in the process of growth. Yet, when we shift how we define these experiences, something remarkable happens. The very things that were holding us back begin to push us forward. Every problem carries a hidden message. It may be disguised as frustration, disappointment, or difficulty, but beneath it lies knowledge. When something doesn't go the way you planned, it forces you to pause, reflect, and adjust. Without problems, there would be no reason to develop new skills, no push to innovate, and no drive to improve. A world without obstacles would be comfortable, but it would also be stagnant. The truth is, most of the progress we make in life is born out of moments where things didn't go right the first time. Think of a child learning to walk. The child falls again and again, but each fall teaches balance, coordination, and strength. The falls are not failures in the negative sense. They are feedback. They are necessary steps toward mastering the skill. As adults, we often forget this natural process. We grow fearful of failure, ashamed of mistakes, and desperate to avoid them. Yet failure has always been the most reliable teacher. A failed business teaches lessons that no textbook could capture. A broken relationship reveals patterns of behavior that need changing. A missed opportunity pushes us to be more prepared the next time. The key lies not in avoiding failure, but in reframing it as a guide. When you begin to see problems as lessons, your relationship with them changes. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You ask, what is this trying to teach me? That single shift in thinking gives you power over the situation. You move from victimhood to ownership. Ownership allows you to grow because instead of being stuck in frustration, you search for meaning and application. Problems are no longer dead ends. They are detours leading you toward a more effective path. Failures, too, provide direct feedback. When an idea doesn't work, the world is not telling you to quit. It is telling you to adjust. Feedback is the world's way of refining your approach. Consider how inventors, scientists, and creators view failure. Thomas Edison famously tested thousands of materials before inventing the light bulb. Each failed attempt was not a wasted effort, but valuable feedback about what didn't work, narrowing down the possibilities of what might. Imagine if he had given up after the first few setbacks. The very thing that now lights up the world would never have been born. This way of thinking can be applied to any area of life. A person who applies for a job and gets rejected could see it as a sign of inadequacy, or they could treat it as feedback to improve their skills, refine their interview technique, or search for a role better suited to their strengths. A student who receives a poor grade could sink into self-doubt, or they could analyze what went wrong and adjust their study habits. In both examples, failure transforms from an endpoint into a stepping stone. The external event is the same, but the interpretation decides whether progress is made. Another powerful aspect of reframing problems and failures is that it builds resilience. Every time you face a setback and treat it as a lesson, you strengthen your ability to handle the next one. You become less fearful of mistakes because you know they serve a purpose. This resilience frees you to take more risks, try new things, and pursue bigger goals. Ironically, the people who succeed most often are not those who avoid failure, but those who fail more frequently, because each failure provides new knowledge that compounds into expertise. It's also important to recognize that feedback is not always comfortable. Sometimes it hurts to see where we went wrong, but discomfort is not the enemy. It is part of the growth process. Growth rarely feels easy in the moment, but it always feels worth it afterward. By embracing feedback instead of resisting it, you accelerate your progress. Every obstacle becomes a classroom, every failure a teacher, and every challenge an invitation to grow stronger. When you live with this perspective, life stops being something that happens to you and becomes something that happens for you. Every struggle carries seeds of progress. Every disappointment carries direction. Every mistake carries wisdom. Obstacles don't just slow you down, they prepare you for what's ahead. And once you learn to see them this way, you realize that problems and failures were never the enemy. They were always the path forward. Success is not about avoiding struggles, but transforming how you think within them. Too often, people assume that those who achieve greatness have somehow managed to bypass hardship, as if their path was free of obstacles. In reality, the opposite is true. Every story of meaningful success is a story filled with struggles, setbacks, and moments of doubt. The difference lies not in whether struggles existed, but in how they were approached. Those who rise do not waste energy wishing for an easier road. They focus on building the strength to walk the road they are given. Struggles are unavoidable because they are woven into the process of growth. Just as muscles cannot become stronger without resistance, people cannot become resilient without challenges. Struggles test us, refine us, and strip away illusions. They reveal what we are made of and what we are capable of becoming. But the key lies in perspective. If you see struggles as curses, they will drain you. If you see them as teachers, they will elevate you. It is the thinking inside the struggle that determines whether it becomes a stumbling block or a stepping stone. Consider someone facing financial hardship. One person might dwell on scarcity, constantly reinforcing the thought that life is unfair and opportunities are out of reach. That thinking creates paralysis. Another person facing the exact same circumstances might focus on resourcefulness, asking themselves how to maximize what little they have, how to learn new skills, or how to create value in ways they hadn't considered before. Their circumstances may not change overnight, but their thinking empowers them to take steps that eventually improve their situation. The struggle is the same, but the internal narrative leads to two entirely different outcomes. This principle applies in every domain of life. In relationships, struggles often appear as misunderstandings, conflicts, or unmet expectations. If you think of these struggles as proof that the relationship is broken, you may walk away prematurely. But if you think of them as opportunities to communicate better, to grow in patience, or to deepen trust, those very struggles can become the foundation of a stronger bond. The circumstances don't change, but the mindset shifts, and with it, the entire trajectory of the relationship. When we talk about transforming how we think within struggles, it doesn't mean pretending they are easy or ignoring the pain they bring. Struggles are real and they often hurt deeply. The transformation comes from acknowledging the difficulty while refusing to let it define you. It comes from asking different questions, not why me, but what can I take from this? How can this shape me into someone stronger, wiser, more prepared? These questions turn pain into progress and suffering into strength. History is full of people who embody this mindset. Many leaders, innovators, and changemakers did not succeed because life was smooth for them. They succeeded because they reframed their struggles into motivation. Think of someone who faced rejection after rejection but used each one as fuel to improve their craft. Think of someone who failed in business multiple times but treated each failure as research for the next attempt. These individuals did not run from struggle, they engaged with it differently. Their thinking made the difference. Another important aspect of this truth is that struggles often reveal hidden potential. When life is easy, there is little need to stretch beyond what is comfortable. But when challenges arise, they demand creativity, perseverance, and resilience. These qualities may lie dormant until struggle awakens them. What you discover about yourself during hardship often surprises you. The patience you didn't know you had, the problem-solving skills you never used before, the endurance you didn't think was possible. These discoveries would remain hidden without the struggle that forced them out. It's also worth noticing that struggles shape character more than victories do. Success feels good, but it does not build depth. Struggles, on the other hand, teach humility, empathy, and gratitude. They remind us of our limits while showing us how to expand them. They make us more compassionate toward others because we recognize in their struggles reflections of our own. In this way, struggles don't just make us stronger individuals, they make us better human beings. When people run from struggles, they often end up running from the very opportunities that could transform them. Avoiding discomfort leads to stagnation, but engaging with it thoughtfully leads to growth. The most successful people are not those who escaped the fire of struggle, but those who allowed it to refine them. They didn't wish for fewer problems, they developed better thinking to navigate them. And in doing so, they discovered that success is not the absence of struggle, but the wisdom gained from enduring it. Ultimately, struggles are unavoidable, but they are not unmanageable. The real power lies in how we choose to think within them. If we see them as punishments, they weaken us. If we see them as opportunities for transformation, they strengthen us. The difference between defeat and triumph, between despair and hope, is rarely the struggle itself. It is the mindset we bring to it. And that is why success is found not in avoiding struggles, but in transforming how we think while facing them. Aligning your thoughts with growth and resilience creates a life that reflects those values. The human mind has a way of shaping reality according to what it consistently focuses on. If you constantly dwell on weakness, setbacks, or limitations, you unconsciously build a life that mirrors those patterns. On the other hand, when your thinking is grounded in growth and resilience, you begin to design a reality where progress and perseverance become natural. This is not magic or wishful optimism. It is the practical outcome of how thoughts influence actions. Actions create habits, and habits construct the life you live. Growth is a mindset that thrives on expansion, learning, and improvement. When your thoughts are aligned with growth, you no longer see yourself as fixed or defined by past experiences. Instead, you recognize that every skill can be developed, every mistake can be corrected, and every challenge can become a stepping stone. A growth-oriented thought pattern pushes you to ask questions like, how can I improve? Or what is this experience teaching me? These questions lead to new actions, signing up for a course, practicing a skill, seeking mentorship, or experimenting with new approaches. Over time, these small actions compound into noticeable progress, and your life begins to reflect the mindset that fueled it. Resilience, on the other hand, is the ability to endure difficulties without losing momentum. Thoughts of resilience remind you that setbacks are temporary, that storms eventually pass, and that strength is built in the process of enduring. When your thinking aligns with resilience, you stop quitting at the first sign of resistance. Instead, you find ways to adapt, adjust, and keep moving forward. A resilient thought pattern might sound like, this is hard, but it's not the end, or I may bend, but I won't break. Such thoughts give you the mental endurance to face challenges without being consumed by them. As a result, your life begins to showcase persistent stability and the quiet strength that others admire. When growth and resilience combine in your thinking, they create a powerful cycle. Growth pushes you to seek challenges because you view them as opportunities to develop. Resilience ensures that when challenges become overwhelming, you don't give up. Together, they build a life where you continuously rise higher, not because you never face difficulties, but because you refuse to stay down. It is this combination that separates people who plateau from those who keep advancing regardless of external conditions. Take the example of someone who wants to advance in their career. If their thoughts lack growth, They might believe that they've reached the limit of their abilities, so they stop learning and miss opportunities. If their thoughts lack resilience, the first rejection or failure may cause them to give up entirely. But when their thoughts are aligned with both growth and resilience, they see each rejection as a lesson, each challenge as practice, and each setback as temporary. They continue to improve their skills, network with others, and remain persistent until success comes. Their external achievements eventually reflect the internal mindset they cultivated. This principle applies just as strongly in personal life. A person aligned with growth will seek to improve communication and relationships, to learn from conflicts, and to nurture bonds instead of letting them wither. A person aligned with resilience will withstand disappointments, forgive, and rebuild trust rather than walking away at the first sign of trouble. Together, these ways of thinking create strong, healthy, lasting relationships that reflect the values of growth and resilience. The truth is that life will always test these values. There will be seasons when growth feels slow and resilience feels exhausting. But those are the very moments when aligned thinking shows its power. By holding on to thoughts that emphasize learning and endurance, you prevent temporary struggles from becoming permanent barriers. You remind yourself that the person who refuses to learn will stay stagnant, and the person who refuses to endure will stay stuck. But the one who learns and endures cannot help but move forward. What's most important to understand is that thoughts aligned with growth and resilience do not eliminate difficulties. They transform your response to them. You start to interpret failures as feedback, challenges as opportunities, and difficulties as temporary tests. This mental alignment ensures that no matter what happens around you, the life you build reflects progress, strength, and hope. Over time, others begin to notice that your results, your relationships, and even your outlook carry the mark of someone who has chosen to align their thoughts with values that uplift instead of limit. In the end, your life becomes a mirror of your dominant thought patterns. Aligning with growth ensures that you never stop moving forward, and aligning with resilience ensures that you never stop standing tall. Together, they create not only achievements that can be seen on the outside, but also a depth of character that can be felt from within. And when those values guide your thinking, your life will inevitably become a reflection of the strength and expansion you have chosen to cultivate. The truth about changing your life is that it always begins with changing the way you think. Your mindset is the foundation on which every action, every choice, and every result is built. When you recognize that your thoughts are the architects of your reality, you stop waiting for circumstances to shift and instead focus on shifting perspective. You learn to see problems as lessons, failures as feedback, and struggles as opportunities for growth. You begin to align your thinking with resilience and expansion, creating a cycle where progress feels inevitable, not accidental. Life will always present challenges, but when your inner world is shaped by clarity, purpose, and strength, those challenges become stepping stones rather than stumbling blocks. In the end, the life you live on the outside will always reflect the mindset you nurture on the inside. And that is why changing your thinking is the most powerful decision you can ever make to change your life.